The snow hit harder than the forecast predicted. Slush smeared the windshield, and the wipers groaned with each slow sweep. Odessa gripped the wheel, tighter knuckles pale against the leather, her eyes darting between the icy road and the glowing GPS on her phone taped to the dash. 9 hours from Boston to a gated estate in upstate New York with a strawberry champagne cake on the passenger's seat and the words, "To Vina with all my heart," written in delicate gold icing across the top. She hadn't even told Vina she was coming. Odessa believed in surprise. She believed in grand gestures, the kind that meant something. Vina used to believe too when they were kids, building forts out of couch cushions, pretending they were royalty. Now Vina lived in curated perfection, all soft pink palettes and elegance hashtags. Still, Odessa thought maybe, just maybe, she'd be happy to see her. The mansion loomed behind iron gates wrapped in golden fairy lights. The snow glistened powdered like sugar over expensive stone. A valet gave her a confused look when she pulled in. "Are you with catering?" Odessa smiled, heart already sinking. "No, I'm family." Inside, the warmth hit her like a wall, roses. And vanilla and candle wax, women in silk gowns floated past. Clinking glasses and whispering behind manicured hands. Odessa walked carefully, heels clicking, clutching the cake like a fragile secret. She saw her mother first, tall, immaculate, dressed in navy and pearls, who gave her a polite air kiss and said only, "Try not to make this about you." Then she saw Vina, the blush pink dress, the updo, the ring. Odessa stepped forward with a smile. "Surprise." Vina froze for half a second, then, "You actually came. Drove all day through the storm. I wanted to be here." No hug. No thank you. Just a quick glance around like checking who might be watching. I'll be back in a second," Vina mumbled before disappearing behind a hallway curtain. Odessa stood there, with the cake guests brushing past like she was part of the wallpaper. She placed it gently on the dessert table beside monogrammed cookies and mini tiramisu cups. She scanned the room for a name tag, a place card, anything. Her name was nowhere. She passed the slideshow photos of Vina and her fiancé in Central Park, Paris, childhood snapshots with family. Odessa didn't appear once. Not even a cropped shoulder. She wandered into the coat room more out of necessity than purpose. 10 gift boxes sat in a tray labeled "Bridal Party." Odessa's name wasn't among them. She sat down, took a breath. Her phone buzzed with a message from a group chat she didn't recognize. "Vina, she doesn't fit the look. We'll say the list was full." Odessa stared at the screen. The sting came slow like frostbite. She stood, she adjusted her coat. She told herself it was just one bad moment. But then she turned the wrong corner and ended up in the kitchen and heard it. Laughter. Vina's voice. 9 hours for a pity cupcake. Honestly, a snowstorm would have been quieter. Another voice, a bridesmaid maybe. "She's always desperate for attention." "God," Vina said and laughed. What if she'd crashed? Odessa didn't move. She just listened. Then she turned and left, heels silent against the marble floor. Back at the dessert table, she lifted the lid on the cake box. It was perfect. Uncut, untouched. She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo. Not for revenge, not even for memory, for proof. Because no one would believe this otherwise. Odessa didn't storm out. She didn't slam a door. She walked past the valet, wrapped her coat tight, and stepped into the snow. The wind howled through the trees, carrying no answers, only cold. As she walked to her car, she whispered, "They wrote their version, but I'll keep the truth." And she drove away, leaving the cake behind, untouched under the chandeliers. A sweet offering, swallowed by silence. Odessa woke to the dim light of a roadside motel, seeping through faded floral curtains. Her coat still clung to the back of the armchair, crusted with yesterday's snow. And the scent of buttercream from the untouched cake still lingered faintly in her hair. She rolled over, eyes swollen from sleep and unshed tears and reached for her phone. 14 unread messages. The first one wasn't a question. It was a verdict. You embarrassed Vina. The second, why would you leave the cake and disappear like that? The third hit harder than the rest. You've always been dramatic. This was her moment. You ruined it. Not one of them asked if she got home safe, if she was okay, if she had eaten. She sat up slowly, spine stiff from sleeping. Half dressed on a thin mattress, her fingers hovered above the screen as she scrolled through the barrage of accusations. A group message from her cousins, a snide remark from a bridesmaid she hadn't spoken to in years. Even her mother had chimed in, with a dismissive line in the family group chat. She's been unstable lately. Just give her space. Odessa's jaw clenched. She clicked over to Instagram, heart already bracing. There it was. A photo of Vina in the center of her circle of bridesmaids, all in matching faux fur shawl. The caption, a perfect night with all the people I love. Blessed, #engaged life. Not a mention of Odessa. Not even a footnote. And in the comments, hearts, cheers, congratulations from people who had once shared birthday cakes with her. Played hopscotch in their driveway, danced at her graduation. She was invisible, erased. Odessa stared at the screen for a long time before setting the phone down. Her chest ached, not from surprise but from confirmation. This wasn't just neglect. It was a campaign. She walked to the motel mirror and looked at her reflection. Her eyeliner was smudged, her lips pale, but her eyes, those were clear now, cold-focused. She opened her laptop and clicked into the folder named Proof. Inside, every detail was cataloged, the invoice for the cake, the screenshot of the guest list that omitted her name, the forwarded message from a bridesmaid that read, "She's not even supposed to be here," and finally the recording. Vina's voice unmistakable. 9 hours for what a pity cupcake. Odessa replayed it once. Then again. Then she saved a clipped version of just that one line. She wasn't angry anymore. She was tired, and tired women didn't burn down houses. They pulled the bricks out, one by one. She opened Instagram, uploaded 3 photos. One of the cakes still untouched on the kitchen counter, perfectly preserved under soft kitchen light. One of her windshield coated in sleet and ice, the blurry view of her 9-hour drive. And one of herself standing outside the Langston estate. Her cheeks red from cold, hair-damp eyes, distant, alone. Her caption was only one sentence. Sometimes you show up for people who wouldn't shovel your name off a sidewalk, but that's how you learn. She disabled comments after 2 hours. The notifications poured in, but she didn't look, she didn't need to argue. She had proof. She closed the laptop and leaned back into the motel headboard, exhaling for the first time in hours. The storm outside had passed, but the one she had just unleashed was only beginning. And unlike the snow, this one wouldn't melt quietly. Odessa awoke to the pale light filtering through the small motel window. The light wasn't gentle nor warm, just stark, sterile, much like the emptiness she felt since yesterday. Her coat still hung on the chair, crusted with remnants of snow, and the faint scent of buttercream lingered in the air. She reached for her phone. 48 unread messages. The first wasn't a question, it was a verdict. You embarrassed Vina. The second, why would you leave the cake and disappear like that? The third cut deeper. You've always been dramatic. This was her moment. You ruined it. Not one asked if she got home safely, if she was okay, if she had eaten. She sat up slowly, her back stiff from sleeping, half-dressed on the thin mattress as her fingers hovered over the screen as she scrolled through the barrage of accusations. Messages from cousins, a snide remark from a bridesmaid she hadn't spoken to in years. Even her mother chimed in. She's been unstable lately. Just give her space. Odessa's jaw tightened. She opened Instagram, bracing herself. There it was. A photo of Vina surrounded by her bridesmaids, all in matching faux fur shawls. The caption, a perfect night with all the people I love, #blessed, #engaged life. Not a mention of Odessa. Not even a footnote. In the comments, hearts, cheers, congratulations. From people who once shared birthday cakes with her, danced at her graduation. She was invisible, a race. Odessa stared at the screen before setting the phone down. Her chest ached, not from surprise but from confirmation. This wasn't neglect. It was a campaign. She walked to the motel mirror and looked at her reflection. Smudged eyeliner, pale lips, but her eyes. Those were clear now, cold focus. She opened her laptop and clicked into the folder named Truth. Inside, every detail was cataloged: the invoice for the cake, the screenshot of the guest list that omitted her name, the forwarded message from a bridesmaid. She's not even supposed to be here. And finally, the recording. Vina's voice unmistakable. 9 hours for what, a pity cupcake? Odessa replayed it once. Then again. Then she saved a clipped version of just that line. She wasn't angry anymore. She was tired, and tired women didn't burn down houses. They pulled the bricks out, one by one. She opened Instagram, uploaded 3 photos. One of the untouched cake on the kitchen counter, one of her windshield coated in sleet and ice, and one of herself standing outside the estate, cheeks red from cold hair, damp eyes, distant, alone. Her caption: "Sometimes you show up for people who wouldn't shovel your name off a sidewalk, but that's how you learn." She disabled comments after 2 hours. Notifications poured in, but she didn't look. She didn't need to argue. She had proof. She closed the laptop and leaned back into the headboard, exhaling for the first time in hours. The storm outside had passed, but the one she had unleashed was just beginning. And unlike the snow, this one wouldn't melt quietly. The weekend brunch took place in an old estate house just outside New York City, where sunlight streamed politely through floor-to-ceiling windows and jazz music played softly under the chatter of 30 well-dressed guests. On the surface, it was idyllic: white platters of sliced fruit, towers of pastries, delicate china. But beneath the silverware and curated smiles, the air crackled with a quiet electricity. Odessa sat at the end of the table, her navy blue dress simple, pressed but understated. No one really made eye contact. A few relatives gave her stiff nods, the kind you offer a stranger you're obligated to greet. She wasn't meant to be here to speak, just to behave. That much was clear, and then Vina stood up. Champagne flute in hand, she tilted her head with practiced grace and beamed. "Family," she said, "isn't just about blood. It's about choosing love over resentment. Knowing when to let go of the past." A beat smiles and raised glasses. The words floated like a blessing, but landed like a slap. Odessa blinked slowly. Her jaw stayed still, but her hands clasped tighter in her lap. Her heartbeat was calm, surprisingly so, like the eye of a storm that had long since passed. Rage, and landed somewhere quieter, colder. She stood. "Mind if I say something too?" she asked, voice clear even. The room stilled. Aunt Ruth's fork hovered midair. Uncle Gary coughed into his napkin. "I drove 9 hours in a blizzard," Odessa began, with a cake I ordered weeks in advance. "Because I believed showing up mattered, I thought. Maybe this time I wouldn't be invisible." Vina shifted in her seat, eyes narrowing. Odessa didn't look at her. But when I arrived, there was no seat for me, no name card, no welcome, no acknowledgement. I heard people laugh. I heard my name tossed around, like I was a mistake someone forgot to delete from the guest list. She pulled out her phone, tapped once, and held it up to the microphone. Vina's voice, unmistakable, rang out into the brunch air. 9 hours for what? A pity cupcake. Then another voice, her bridesmaid. God, imagine if she crashed. The silence would have been nice. Someone at the table gasped. Others looked down. A few stared straight ahead like mannequins. I didn't come here to ruin anything. Odessa said I came because I thought family meant something more than optics. I was wrong. Vina stood abruptly. That's not fair, she hissed. You're twisting. Odessa turned to face her. You twisted it the moment you decided humiliation was easier than honesty. Vina's fiancé, his name was Peter, stood up without a word, jaw clenched, and walked out. He didn't even look at Vina. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. Odessa didn't smile, didn't cry, She simply set the microphone down, took one last look at the stunned room, and walked toward the door. Aunt Ray followed her quietly. At the threshold, she whispered, "You didn't just tell the truth, baby. You burned down the script. They've been writing their whole lives." Odessa finally smiled. Not because she had won, but because for the first time she didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not anymore. Monday morning arrived quietly. No inbox full of accusations, no passive-aggressive group texts, no phone vibrating with damage control from relatives who had long stopped calling unless there was gossip to share. Just sunlight seeping through the curtains of Odessa's small apartment, casting soft gold across her kitchen table. She stirred slowly from sleep, blinking away the fog of dreams. The storm outside and inside had passed. All that remained was silence. But this time it didn't ache. One notification. Just one. A message from Vina. Please. No punctuation. No context. Just a single word glowing on her lock screen like an echo that hadn't fully died out yet. Odessa stared at it for a long moment. Was it vulnerability, manipulation, a cry for connection, or a bait for control? She didn't answer, not yet. The kettle on the stove began to whistle. Odessa stood padded across the cold tile floor in socked feet and poured herself a cup of tea. Outside the window, the snow had melted into gray puddles along the street. Life had resumed. But hers had changed. Her phone buzzed again. This time not from Vina. It was a message from Blythe. "I'm not proud of who I was that night." Simple, honest enough. Then another from a cousin she hadn't spoken to in years. "I believed what they said. I'm sorry, I should have known better." Not everyone had stayed silent. She sat at her kitchen table sipping tea, the steam curling around her cheeks. On the opposite chair sat her laptop, open idle. A draft she'd started weeks ago still blinked in the text box. To the quiet one at the table, "You are not invisible." She reread the line slowly, letting it settle in her chest. There was no anger in the words now. Only clarity. Her phone rang. It was Vina. Odessa let it ring 3 times before answering. No hesitation. Just readiness. Vina's voice was softer than usual. Not polished, not filtered through performative grace. Just raw. "You just left," she whispered. "You disappeared after everything." Odessa leaned back in her chair. "That's how I've felt since I was 9, Vina." Silence. Then a fragile breath on the other end. "I messed up," Vina said. "I didn't want you to come because I knew people would compare us. They always did. And I hated the way that made me feel. So you chose to humiliate me. I chose to disappear you because I thought if I controlled the story, I could finally breathe. I didn't know how to share the spotlight. I thought it was either you or me." Odessa closed her eye. "You could have told me I would have still sent the cake, I just wouldn't have driven through a blizzard to deliver it." Vina didn't laugh. She didn't deny it. She just said, "I started therapy this week." And that, more than anything, caught Odessa off guard. "Good," she said. "I think that's the most human thing I've heard you say in years." There were tears on the other end, not loud, not theatrical, just quiet, weeping from a woman who had finally run out of excuses. "I don't hate you," Odessa added. "But I'm not going back to the version of us where I had to shrink just to make you comfortable." Vina didn't argue. They hung up, not with a bang, but with a silence that felt earned. Odessa stared at the blinking cursor on her laptop screen. She took a breath, lifted her hands, and began to type. Not with fury, not with spite, but with the calm of someone who no longer needed to be edited. Then she hit post. She didn't check likes, didn't wait for comments. She just closed the tab and stood. That afternoon, she walked 2 blocks to the bakery near her apartment, the same one where she'd placed the order for the cake that never got served. She stepped inside and smiled at the woman behind the counter. "Just something small, she said. White frosting, gold dust, no message." The woman nodded, celebrating something. Odessa thought for a moment. "Yes," she said, "me." Back home, she set the cake on the table, lit a single candle. No music, no fanfare. just the soft flicker of flame and the warmth of knowing she no longer needed validation from anyone to honor herself. She sliced a piece, took a bite, and closed her eyes. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, her heart was quieter still. Not every storm is meant to destroy. Some come to clear the air. And Odessa. Odessa was the storm and the clear sky that followed. After driving through a storm, being erased from her own family story, and finally reclaiming her voice. Odessa's journey wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting the truth. This story reminds us that being silent for too long allows others to narrate our lives for us. But the moment we choose to speak even gently, even firmly, we begin to reclaim our power. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet slice of cake alone by the window, knowing you no longer need permission to exist fully. This isn't just Odessa's story. It's for anyone who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or uninvited. If you've ever been the quiet one at the table, let this remind you, you are not invisible. Like, comment, and subscribe to hear more real, raw, and empowering stories. Your voice matters, and here your story belongs.